Hello and welcome to the Bestseller Experiment, where we explore the inner game of writing and life and inspire you to start, finish, and publish a best-selling book. I'm Mark Devoe, and today I am in conversation with the absolutely amazing Kate Mosse, author of the multi-million selling Labyrinth. But before we dive in, I'm excited to share with you about the launch of the new Bestseller Experiment app. If you're new to the Bestseller Experiment, welcome. And you can experience the whole journey, the last 7 years, delivered to you real time, starting with episode 1, to help keep you motivated, inspired week by week as you write. And for seasoned listeners and those wanting to binge, and we know there's lots of you out there that do that, you can access over 500 episodes and interviews, including over 100 hours of deep dives and full-length shows exclusively on the app, plus a few more bonuses that we've never put out there before, such as a really cool chat Mark and I had about our favorite show, Breaking Bad. And what's more, by supporting the app, you are helping us share the Bestseller Experiment with more writers and inspiring them on their journey. So pop over to bestsellerexperiment.com/app and try the app for free. So this week, I'm in conversation with Kate Mosse CBE. Kate's a global best-selling author with over 8 million sales, and her previous 10 novels include Labyrinth, which became the highest selling novel of the year and was made into a TV series. She's also founder of the Women's Prize for Fiction, which has really changed the landscape for women's writing over the last 30 years. And she's also, as a full-time carer and author, Kate is a huge inspiration to writers. So in this interview, we discuss Kate's new novel, The Map of Bones, Kate's up-and-coming theatre tour based on her book Labyrinth, Kate's disciplined writing routine and time management, which has really led to her incredible output, and how and why Kate lets her characters lead. Plus, subscribe to the Bestseller Experiment app and you'll get the extended version where Kate reveals her process of writing. She talks about when to stop and start researching, and also the difference between head research and foot research. We delve into her process of editing as well, which led to 7 novels in the last 6 years, and so much more. So let's listen in. Kate Mosse, welcome to the Bestseller Experiment.
It's lovely to be here. Finally to be on.
Absolutely. We're so delighted for you to join us today. And we're even more excited about your new book, The Map of Bones, that's coming out. Well, it's actually out now when we have this interview live. So tell us about the journey for this book, because this is the 4th in a series, isn't it?
It's the 4th in a series, although you can read it on its own. You know, I work very hard to make sure that every book stands on its own 2 feet, as it were. But it feels, I'll tell you, it felt very emotional writing this, particularly the end, because the whole idea for the series came to me when I was in the beautiful Western Cape town of Franschhoek in South Africa back in 2012. And, we'll get into some of that. But the point was that I always knew that the book would end, the series would end, the last book would be set in South Africa. So the series starts in 1562, it ends in 1862. So writing this 4th volume has been 12 years in the making. I've been dreaming and imagining and planning and then writing and then rewriting and editing. And finally, we're here. So it's felt a very emotional experience, actually, writing it. And I hope readers are going to really feel that it's a proper full stop, that they have had 300 years of this love affair between a Catholic girl and a Protestant boy, and it's taken them all over the world, from Carcassonne in the southwest of France to Paris to Amsterdam to the Canary Islands to finally South Africa in The Map of Bones. And that I very much hope that readers who've been on the whole journey with me will take a deep breath when they finish and they shut the book and go, well, that was time well spent with those characters.
And I can imagine they're going to do that thing that so many readers do, where they want to try and slow down towards the end of the book just to eat.
Yeah, but that's not how I write. It gets, because even though, people say is it historical fiction, for me, the way I describe my work is adventure fiction. And it has many elements of thriller writing. And so that sense of acceleration and jeopardy, and that you're turning the pages and then you're turning them a little bit faster, a little bit faster, a little bit faster, that moving towards the final climax and what's going to happen. And then, of course, for me, the epilogue is always the quiet taking stock. Okay, this is in the end the story that was told. So I don't want them to slow down. I want them to be very, very fast, and then okay.
And then take a good rest, no doubt.
A good rest, exactly.
Absolutely.
Lie down. Yeah.
That's great. It's interesting because, having read a lot of historical-based fiction, I loved how this book starts. I mean, it is out the gate. There is literally, you don't have a chance to catch your breath. And Suzanne's off on. I mean, I love the fact that you're page turning from page one, which is great. Was that intentional from your end?
Yes, it is, because I think I'm a very old-fashioned writer in some respects and a very old-fashioned reader. And what I mean by that is there is so much beautiful, elegiac, reflective work, and I love that too. But as a writer, what I want is things to happen. I don't want people to be reflecting upon things that have happened. If you like, that sense of it being live on the page, kind of visceral on the page, is what I'm going for. And I love the fact that you picked up the beginning, because that isn't where I started originally. I started later. I didn't necessarily want to reveal the thing that had happened to the lead character. But then when I had got a first draft, I thought, you know what? We need to be there. We need not to be wondering or speculating or being told about these things. In retrospect, we need to be there as it happens. And I do think that transformed the book, because it was, oh my God, wow.
Yes.
That's so lovely, because this is almost the first interview I've done about the Map of Bones. So the fact that you've picked that up is incredibly satisfying. So thank you. That's a proper person who delves into writers' brains. You did that very well.
Excellent. One of the things as well, I mean, you talked about this 12-year journey. I mean, I know that I think your very first book was nonfiction about the journey of motherhood and parenting.
Yeah, pregnancy.
And I think of that, and pregnancy. So I think of that 12 years as well. It's almost like from the birth of a child to getting them to teenagerdom, which is
well, yes, absolutely. And I'm a grandmother now, so I'm starting it all over again. Yes, it is in a way, except it's quite interesting for writers. In my experience, and I do a lot of interviewing of other writers, and obviously with the Women's Prize and my other work, I'm immersed in it from all different sides. And I think writers had very different experiences during the COVID lockdowns. For me, because I'm a full-time carer and suddenly everything moved online, it meant actually that I was more productive than I'd been. And so when the Map of Bones came out in October in the UK, and it's coming out in other places in America in January, and France and the translated editions and things in the early part of next year, I realized that it was the 7th book I'd published in 6 years, which is quite something. So it's not that I have been writing the Joubert Family Chronicles only. I've written 2 nonfiction books and a short novel for readers who are at the beginning of their reading journey as well. And I think that's very interesting, because there is something that happens, I think, in your 60s, that you do have the sense of, time at your heels, maybe, that you might have I hope I'll have a good 20 years more of writing in me, possibly 30 years, because I come from a very long living family, but who knows? But I do think that I have accelerated in my writing. And so the thing about the Joubert Family Chronicles, that sense of this is a 12-year project, it feels that that's long, but at the same time, it feels it's been very quick, strangely.
Yeah, it does. It feels like time actually speeds up as we get older. And I think
exactly.
we become, right?
Yeah.
We become more aware of the
You've got to get those words down.
We've got to
you
get
can't
them
hang
down.
about. Yes,
exactly. Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the very first things I did many years ago was something called 4,000 Saturdays. And the idea is that we don't know the date of our death. We don't know when we're going to die. We know when we were born, but 4,000 Saturdays is the average number of Saturdays we get in our life. And a lot of people get really scared by that idea. But actually, I find it hugely inspiring because it really makes me want to make the most of every single week. And it really feels like that's where you're at right now. Is that something you've always had a sense of, even from an early age?
No, not at all. I mean, I was brought up by two amazing parents. My mother and my father were wonderful parents and wonderful people, much missed. And they brought my sisters and I up to believe that we could have a go at anything we wanted, but also that give things a go. And if they don't work out and you fail, then you dust yourself down and do something else. And, it's that wonderful Samuel Beckett quote, which is often misquoted, but it notes, try again, fail again, never mind, fail better. And I suppose more than anything, I've lived my working life like that, which was when an opportunity's come along to write my first nonfiction book, then to write a novel, then to, quite recently do a theatre tour, all of these different things. My feeling has been, well, try that. So I've never had a big plan. I have never really been somebody who's thought about, I wonder what I'm going to do in 5 years' time or 10 years' time. Or I've lived in the moment, I suppose, up to a point. And therefore, with writing and the idea of getting all of these things down, it's just that I have an idea, so I pursue it. So I didn't, if somebody had said to me, you're going to publish 7 books in the next 6 years, I would have said, you have never met me. I deliver every book late. I take ages. My books are really long. So I believe, I suppose, for myself, not for all writers. I interview a lot of writers and everybody's different. And anyone who's listening who is a writer, the key thing is discovering what works for you and sticking with that. And there's no trick. There's not one size suits all. It's about what works for you. And what works for me is having an idea and chasing it down. And I've been lucky enough to be in a position, because I am a full-time writer, to do that.
Brilliant. Yeah. It's funny because through the 7 years now that we've been interviewing best-selling authors, we've discovered exactly that. There is no one particular formula.
No trick. Sorry, guys.
I know there's lots of best principles and best practices. There's no 7 secret ingredients that make your secret sauce. So brilliant. I'm glad to hear that. And I think that's part of the mystery and magic. I mean, you've been writing now for many years and you've had incredible success and people love your books. But you wake up every morning with that same vigor, from what I hear. Right?
I do.
What is it about? How would you describe that? What do you think it is about writing that gives you that excitement to get out of bed every morning and hit the desk?
I think that success, thank you for your lovely comments. But actually, I've only been writing for just over 20 years. And so I had a different career and a grown-up life before I became an overnight success at the age of 45. And so I was really grateful for that success. And I knew that it was luck. Now, this is not in any way to not be proud of my writing or how hard I work, and I do work very hard, and I am proud of my writing. But because I was a publisher and I've been around a long time, I know that there are many things that make a book successful. So when my novel Labyrinth, which was my 5th book, became a global bestseller, it wasn't because it was the best book that had ever been published, although I'm pretty pleased with it and I love that people love it. It was a whole combination, an alchemy of things that made it just happen to be the one book that in that year, 2005 and 2006, had the wind beneath its sails. And you can't plan for that. And you must not think it's to do with you. Of course, you turn up and you work hard and you do all of those things, and your publishers, if you're lucky, are wonderful and do a brilliant job. But there are many fabulous books that never get that wind beneath their sails. And dare I say it, there's some other books that do, and maybe they shouldn't. They don't deserve it.
Yeah.
So when I'm talking to people who are beginning to write, I say every time, the only thing in your control is the quality of the text. All you can do is make sure that the typescript that you give in is as good as you could possibly do, and you are proud of it. And then you must draw a line in the sand, because what happens to it after that is not in your hands. And that, I suppose, is how I feel about it. That when Labyrinth became a global bestseller all over the world and sold millions and millions of copies, of course, did I pinch myself going, is this actually happening? Of course I did. Of course I did. As a publisher, I'd been devastated when books I loved had not done that. But the important thing was knowing that it liberated me to be a full-time writer. So every day when I wake up, and my job is to come and sit at this desk where I'm talking to you now and make stuff up and play with my imaginary friends, I never forget that that's a privilege and that is luck that made that happen. So I don't have any time for, it's all terribly difficult, I've got writer's block. No, it's a job, and you are so lucky to have the job. And what I said to my children when they were growing up was, all you need to achieve in your working life is finding something that when you're doing it, you don't notice the arms on the clock moving round. Doesn't matter what it is, but that you look up and 2 hours have passed. And I still have that feeling. I look up and 2 hours have passed. And so, of course, some books do better than others, and books that you love, and maybe the readers don't love those so much. And these are trivial things compared to being able to sit here and make stuff up.
I love it. Yeah, it reminds me of the end of Chris Martin Coldplay concert at Glastonbury, where he said to the 100,000 people on the pyramid stage, "Thank you for giving us the best job in the world."
Yeah, there we go. Yeah,
right? It's a really incredible.
Don't take it for granted.
Yeah.
And so many people would love to be in my position, and so that's what brings me with great vigor and energy to my desk every day, which is, wow, who knew that you could make a career and support a family on being a full-time writer? Doesn't happen often. So just appreciate that.
Yeah. And you mentioned Labyrinth, and of course next year is a very special year for the book, and you're going to be doing a theatre tour, I hear. I
am. I did a one-woman show theatre tour based on my feminist history book, Warrior Queens and Quiet Revolutionaries. And I discovered that I really enjoyed performing. I mean, anyone who knows me probably won't be that surprised, but I've done a huge amount of public speaking. I enjoy, for me, the joy of publication, and why I do such big publication tours, with the Map of Bones, I have, I think, 60 events. And everybody goes, why are you still doing that? And the reason I'm doing it is because, for me, the book comes to life when it's in the reader's hands. And I love meeting readers and readers telling me what they think, and that dialogue between us. So I thought, well, I was asked by a theatre company, have you ever thought of doing a show? And it's very, very different. It's not sitting on a stage talking about a book. I can do that. But a theatre show is lights and its music and its cues, and it's, an hour before the interval, and then everybody goes off to get their Maltesers and their glass of wine or whatever it is, their ice cream tub. And then they come back and there's another hour and a half afterwards, and it's you on your own on a stage in the spotlight. And I loved it. It was exhausting, but I loved it. What we discovered while I was doing that was that for quite a lot of readers, Labyrinth was a very special book. It wasn't just a book they'd liked. It was a book that had made them go to Carcassonne. It was a book that had made them propose to their fiancé. It was a book where they'd had some of the lines from the novel tattooed on their arms. And that is beautiful, actually. But it made us think, well, it's the 20th anniversary of the UK publication next year. Maybe doing a show that it's called Unlocking the Secrets of the Labyrinth. And it is about the real history behind the story that I put on the page. So the Nazi Grail hunters, the reason there are so many labyrinths in France more than anywhere else in Europe, the real characters that inspired my imagined characters in the book, the landscape of the southwest of France, the mysticism of the southwest of France, Grail legends in general. And so it will be a very immersive theatre show with a lot of special effects and all of these things to bring the history and the writing of that novel to life. So I'm not going to be doing voices or putting on costumes, but I am going to be sharing how the book came to be. And I can't wait. I mean, I'm really enjoying the Map of Bones book tour, but that is me in a bookshop or in a literary festival talking about a novel. And that is wonderful because it's the end of an era, really, these books. But to go back to Labyrinth 20 years later is proving wonderfully enjoyable.
Yeah, and who knew when you were writing that book,
who knew
that you'd end up doing a stage show?
Who knew?
I mean,
at the age, in my 60s, different brilliant. Town every night, different Premierian every night. But good old Premierian. It sounds a bizarre thing, but when you're doing a theatre tour, I asked my son, who was for the first 10 years of his working career in musical theatre, and did therefore a lot of touring and, knows how to do that thing. You're, in a different town every night. It's like that line in Kiss Me, Kate, we start in Verona, that kind of, they're going somewhere every night. And what I did discover was that, and my son told me this, was don't do anything else. I'm a great one for doing all my emails, trying to write another book, reading proofs. And the key thing is when you're on tour like that, your working day starts at 6 and it finishes at midnight. And then the next morning you travel somewhere else. So actually read books, explore the beautiful town that you're in, have a nice lunch, but take it seriously. Otherwise you just will never survive a 6-week nightly theatre tour.
Absolutely. I mean, just the energy alone of being in front of an audience and the high of like the end of the night, and it's managing that as well, isn't it? But
it's managing that. And it's also that unlike a lot of one woman shows or one man shows, of course, they come off stage and it's done. When you're an author, then there's signing. So it makes it a longer experience. And it's very funny when you're in the UK, and I'm sure it's the same in America and all sorts of other parts of the world, you can see the theatre staff looking to make sure you don't go over midnight, because then everybody's on double time.
Yes.
So it's like, quickly sign very fast.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like being the last people in the restaurant, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. They're putting the chairs on the table and getting the brew out.
Sweeping around your feet. Sweeping up all the Maltesers, no doubt.
All the Maltesers. I mean, I say Maltesers because they are my husband's favourite theatre snack, which is a terrible thing because they're quite noisy.
Yeah, they're also the ones that do when you drop them, you've lost them for good, right? I mean,
yeah, exactly. They're rolling. They're rolling down. I mean, what I really love about doing that is, that book events are fantastic, and you talk to people afterwards and you do all the signing. When people go to the theatre, because tickets are expensive, they have come for a night out in a slightly different sort of way. And the joy is, when you get a ladies' book grouping, because they come in and, they quite often have a glass of Prosecco before it starts, and they will definitely have one in the interval. So you get fantastic energy from the audience, who are kind of, and I'm very interactive with the audience. And I say, you're a terrible audience. I'm getting nothing back from you guys. So I enjoy all of that. And it's a lovely antidote. It's the entirely opposite from how I live a lot of my life, which is sitting in solitude here in my room, in my own head. So I love the balance of those two things.
Yes, I think that's really important as well, isn't it? Because that is probably one of the hardest things as an author, is that you are in isolation. I mean, think about COVID. A lot of people experiencing COVID. That's kind of the life of an author, really, for many.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm very sociable and have been described in the past as annoyingly chirpy. So I like being out and about. So I love writing. I love being immersed in writing. I love that thing when you wake up every morning with that kind of bubble of anticipation in your chest because you've suddenly thought of the one thing that will solve the problem in chapter 7. I love all of that, but I also do like a chat. So, the joy is to be able to balance my working year so that I get, months of silence and reflection and work on my own, and then other months of being out and about.
Brilliant. So I have a question here from Andrea van der Bruggen, who wants to know about research specifically. She says, how do you find a stopping point for research?
That is a very clever question, Andrea, and you are right. It was what a wonderful crime writer, Frances Fifield, once said, oh God, I've got to the bleaching the spoons moment. And what she meant was that you can keep researching and not writing because there's just one more thing you need to find out before you start. And it becomes a displacement activity. For me, the research is fundamental to the books that I write. I do 2 types of research, head research and foot research. The head research is books, archives, libraries, museums, all of the information, getting the timeline, knowing the history. The foot research is being there, walking the streets, seeing where the shadow falls. So if I'm writing a scene where somebody is running away from the soldiers, if the sun falls in a certain direction, if she's hiding behind that wall, she'll be visible. And if it's in the other direction, she won't. Those kind of very, very detailed, granular bits of physical research, which I know my readers really appreciate and love. The idea that if you go to any of the places I write about and I say there's an alley on the left, the alley is on the left. And, if you like literary tourism, that is, a lot of my readers are literary tourists. But then there comes a moment when you have enough of a structure, when you realize that knowing the precise buckle on a shoe is probably not going to stop you writing this chapter. So you just have to be, Andrea, tough with yourself. And I just have to say, okay, enough now. I've got to start writing on this day. I've made the decision. I'm going to start writing on this day. So I'm going to start writing. And know that if there are things that then come up, I need to know, I can go and research them. All the libraries won't have burnt down in the interim, but setting myself deadline and saying, okay, that's enough. I've got enough to be going on with, and then starting.
Great. So really, really great discipline there. That's brilliant advice. And the other question we have is from Gloria Thomas. And Gloria mentioned that she's fascinated by, the volume of work that you create. And she wanted to know, how do you approach the editing process when your story is so vast?
Thank you, Gloria, for that question. Well, I'm lucky in that I have a wonderful husband in every single possible way, but he is also a writer and an editor. And a fantastic editor who I first met in my very first job in publishing when I was the humblest of humble secretaries and she was the editorial assistant, so above me. And so Maria Raitt, who is at Mantle, which is part of Pam Macmillan, and I have known each other for more than 40 years. And my husband and I met at school when we were 15. So I have 2 people who I trust absolutely. So what happens is that when I've got my 3rd draft, I give it to my editor and to my husband, and they then start to read and will say, this is great, but I'm not sure what this is doing and that's doing. So if you like, I have 2, and actually my agent is very good as well. I have 3 new pairs of eyes on it. And it's very, very helpful because what that does is you realize that things that you dreamt in your head, you actually haven't put on the page, or that you've put so much on the page that you've obscured the key thing you wanted to convey at that moment. So it's that moment where you take a step back and other people say what they think, and their reactions tell me a huge amount about the work that I have to do. And I am good at editing. I like editing. The real work of writing a novel is in the editing, not the writing. And it is that thing we talked about, being brutal with yourself. And a top tip, if for anybody that works, if they're listening, who are writers who work on a computer, so you can do this easily. In the old days, you couldn't do this, but you can now. When I'm doing my final read through, before I share it with anybody, I go into my document on my computer and I change the font because it completely changes how the book looks. Like you have got used to it. You are seeing things that are no longer there, or you're seeing things that are not there. You change the font and it looks like somebody else's book. And it's a really good way of helping you to edit and being tough and make the tough decision.
Excellent. What a great tip. Brilliant stuff. Well, Kate, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you today. And I just want to take this opportunity to just acknowledge and honor how you've shown up in this world, you know, what you've accomplished. I mean, it really is incredibly inspiring. I mean, really, this podcast has been built on authors coming on this show and inspiring millions now of people in their writing. And
Good.
you are one of the true leading lights today, you know,
Thank you.
just writing the most incredible stories. And I just want to thank you for what you've done, all those many, many early mornings through all of the incredible, you know, challenges and care that you've had to give others as well. The fact that you've created this career for yourself and given so much out into the world, the legacy of your books that will live forever. I just want to say a very big thank you from everyone who's ever read your book or will be reading your books in the future.
Well, that is an incredibly lovely thing to say. Thank you. I feel that I've had a very lucky time of it.
And may you enjoy all those bags of Maltesers that you'll no doubt get to enjoy. And best of luck with your tour. And obviously the release of your new book, The Map of Bones. Kate Mosse, thank you so much.
Mark, thank you very much.
What are your writing dreams? Finishing that book? Quitting the day job? Becoming a best-selling author? Since 2016, we've interviewed and studied the advice of over 500 best-selling authors who've collectively sold over 1 billion books. And in the Bestseller Academy, we've incorporated powerful and proven strategies for success, inspiring fiction and non-fiction authors just like you to reach new heights and write their best book ever. Ready to take your writing to the next level with accountability, craft, coaching, and the most inspiring and exclusive community of like-minded writers? Well, your bestseller dreams are just a click away. Join us today at bestsellerexperiment.com/academy. That's bestsellerexperiment.com/academy. Well, what a treat that was chatting with Kate. And a massive takeaway for me, and maybe for many of you out there, is the way that Kate has actually been able to write all these books whilst being a full-time carer. And one thing we didn't get to talk about was how she is passionately campaigning for carers out there, the people who are often kind of forgotten in the journey of somebody's, a late life, illness, whatever it might be. I know our family's been through that before as well. And it's, if you're listening to this and you are a carer, I just want to send you all of my love, because I can understand how challenging it can be. And if you can snatch just a few minutes to write, obviously, that's a huge thing. But I also think writing can be so powerful when you're looking after people, when you've got all of that focus on their needs. It's sometimes great to be able to take a bit of a breather and fill yourself up and recharge a little bit with some of your own writing, whether it's writing your novel, your nonfiction, or as Kate said, writing out what's going on in your life right now, being able to express to the page the challenges, the joys, the beauties of what you're experiencing. So it's so good to hear that. And I hope you took away a lot of great advice and tips. One thing that I've learned over the many years of doing this podcast is that it's never a coincidence that an author is successful. You heard a lot about Kate's own disciplined approach to writing. And, you need to have that as a writer. It's something that we all have to work on. But it's also really important that we take the time to think about what we're doing right and also what we need to improve on. And that's very much what we do within the Bestseller Academy. It's about kind of real self-reflection on our own way of writing. Kate talked about how it's completely unique to you, how you do it. But that makes it even more important that you really spend the time looking into what is it that makes me tick? What's working for me? And what's most importantly not working? What do I need to change? And this is the journey of what it is to be a writer. It's about stopping, reflecting, being aware, and then jumping back into the page and writing the very best you can. So thank you again, Kate. And please do go out and check out her book, and maybe even pop along to theatre to see her in person, which sounds absolutely brilliant. I've got to say, I was going to say Maltesers are pretty much up there with me, with Hobnobs as my favourite. I don't know about you, but when I was younger, my biggest treat at Christmas was getting a box of Maltesers with the little perforated lids that you broke open. Over here in North America, they have a competitor to Maltesers, but I've got to say they're not as good. They're not as good. But so if you get the chance, for all our non-American US friends, get a chance to eat a proper box of Maltesers from England. You'll know what all the fuss is about. Anyway, we'd like to also just take this opportunity. I'd personally like to thank all of you listening today, because without you, this podcast wouldn't be possible. And particularly for all of our patrons, both past and present over the years, that have supported this podcast, the subscribers to this podcast. If you click that podcast button on anything that you listen to, whether it's Apple, Spotify, it makes a huge difference if you click that subscribe. So maybe take a second now just to do that. And also all our Bestseller Academy members who really, along with the patrons, have been helping fund the production of this podcast over the many years. We salute you all. And today I'd like just to honour our star patron of the week. Her name is Julianne Schaefer, and Julianne is also an Academy member and a patron. So thank you so much, Julianne, for your contribution and support to make this happen. Now, this week, we've got something a bit different from usual. We've got an Academy Spotlight. Now, I've done a number of these over the years, and these are spotlights on up-and-coming rising stars in the Academy, in the Bestseller Academy. And this week, it's Andrea van der Bruggen. And Andrea is from the Pacific Northwest and writes under the pen name Andrea Korzat. And her current project, she writes in historical fiction and historical fantasy. But her current project is a historical fantasy novel about two young women who serve as the apprentice to the wizard Merlin. So all you fantasy fans, all you Merlin fans will love this. The book's called Merlin's Apprentices and currently work in progress. And when Rowena rebels against her teacher and challenges King Arthur, a magical accident throws her and the king forward in time. Merlin uses his own powers to wait as long as he can. But when he can hold on no longer in the mid-1800s, he takes a young socialite called Nora as his new apprentice. And after Merlin's death, Rowena and King Arthur reappear in Victorian London. Rowena is determined to take the crown of Britain for herself, and it's up to Nora and Arthur to stop her. Absolutely exciting stuff. So if you, as a publisher or a reader, are interested in finding out more, then do get in contact with us or look out for Andrea as she goes on this incredible journey as Andrea Korzat. So do check Andrea out on the web. And like I said, if you're a publisher or maybe an agent who's interested in representing Andrea, do drop us a note at the Bestseller Experiment and we'll get you in contact with each other. Brilliant stuff. And one thing I love about Andrea, I've known Andrea for a number of years now in the Academy. She is such a bright spark. And here is someone who is a full-time mum with kids everywhere. Literally every time we do coaching and we chat online, she's making dinner. She's got kids, she's in the middle of dinner for that. And, very much like Kate, this idea of somebody who's, full-time carer and just, her life is so full and yet still makes time and carves out the time to write. So we salute you, Andrea, and we want you to be an inspiration to all the mums and dads out there who are full-time with their kids. You can do this. You might have a full-time job, might be in an office as well. You can do this. Just carve the time out and make sure you fill yourself up. So brilliant stuff. Well, folks, that's nearly the end of today's episode, but we'd like to thank you all again for listening. I'd like to also remind you that the music from the show has been written by me and my music project, Urban Myth Club. You can check us out on Spotify, Apple, and all good MP3 and streaming sites. Do check it out. And if you'd like to see a video of today's interview with Kate, you can see that on YouTube. If you just pop along to YouTube and search for Bestseller Experiment, or you'll find us at Bestseller Experiment. You can also join us on socials. Pop along to Facebook at Bestseller Experiment, and on X, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and Pinterest, you'll find us at Bestseller XP. So big thanks to our team. Thank you to JD and Liza for all of your incredible support. And again, thank you for everyone for listening. You can check out today's show's notes at bestsellerexperiment.com and sign up to our newsletter for weekly updates and exclusives. And you can also drop me a note by clicking on the contact form on the website. And if you would like to get that book written, just pop along to the 200wordchallenge.com and join thousands of others building their daily writing habit. The joy of this is that you have to try and write for 5 days in a row, 200 words a day. And it's not as easy as you think, but give it a go. So folks, thanks very much and have an absolutely fantastic writing week and writing month. Thank you for spending time with me, and I appreciate it. Until next time, it's goodbye from me, Mark DeVoe, aka Bookmark. Goodbye. Are you ready to transform your writing and your life? Join the 200-word challenge today. In just 5 days, learn to develop a lifelong writing habit with over 2 hours of free expert coaching and the encouragement of a vibrant community. This program has already changed the lives of thousands of writers like you. No matter how busy you are, this challenge will show you that with just 200 words a day, you can significantly boost your creativity, productivity, mental health, and confidence, propelling you towards the end. For the first time, receive comprehensive coaching and step-by-step guidance, all for free. Transform your writing habit and start your journey to become the writer you've always aspired to be. What are you waiting for? Sign up for free now at 200wordchallenge.com and make writing a part of your daily life for life.
To read Back to Reality, the best-selling novel of the Bestseller Experiment by the two Marks, go to bestsellerexperiment.com/Back to Reality.
And subscribe to this podcast to get loads of extra bonuses. Go to bestsellerexperiment.com/subscribe.